everybody, and welcome to another exciting, hair-raising, fun-filled, expeditious episode of Radiorama, where I show you, as the name implies, how to work on radios primarily. But every once in a while, stuff gets thrown in like a TV or a stereo or record player, some other thing. And today, we have a Packard Bell Home Pack. I'm not sure what that means. Packard Bell was probably the largest electronics manufacturer of consumer electronics on the West Coast. It's a California brand. Where I grew up, I didn't see this brand that much. And they existed from, I think they started in 1933. Then in the 50s and 60s, they got into manufacturing computer equipment. And then they were acquired. The brand still exists as a brand name only of Packard Bell Computers. And I don't think those Packard Bell computers are even sold in the U.S. anymore. But anyway, this is a compact little radio. I think this must have been a very common model because I've worked on this exact model countless times. It's very compact, and it's cool that the thing is a power transformer. I kind of prefer that because it makes the restoration job a lot easier. I don't know if it works because we are missing the power cord. It's been cut. It is a very typical 5-tube configuration. I kind of wonder what rectifier this is. Probably like a 5Z4. That's what it looks like. All 5Z4s came in a metal envelope like that, and it certainly is. Speaking of tubes, it looks like that. Oh, come on, get back in there. Come on. Well, I'll leave it up for now. Looks like it's using 3 RCAs, 1 Philco. Is this also an RCA? That's a Philco. 2 Philcos, 3 RCAs. I think Packard Bell later would sell tubes with their name printed on it, but they didn't make their own. They didn't make their own tubes. So there's only 2 screws holding the whole thing in, and so let's yank the chassis and see what's going on underneath and how much of a job we're up against. All right, that wasn't hard. Again, there's hardly anything holding it together. And let's look underneath here. It looks like that it might be all original. That's a Mallory. I'm looking at the quality of the solder. It's hard to tell with some of these because the soldering quality from the factory is itself not very nice. Like you can see here, someone obviously had a gigantic iron when they put those in there. This is 8 microfarads, and what does this guy say? 8 microfarads. So I'll replace both of these with 2 10 microfarad caps. It's interesting. I am confused. That's positive. And is this... These 2 electrolytics are going to the same location, so I'm wondering if maybe one of them is reverse negative, or let's see. Observe polarity. Huh. No, both of these are going to... Never mind. Actually, this goes to chassis ground, and this one does not. It goes directly to the transformer. All right, so it's not like we're combining 2 electrolytic capacitors here. It just looks like one of them maybe has a negative back bias. I've seen that before. There's not a whole lot more to this set. We have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 paper capacitors. And these are almost always marked with their values on the actual capacitor. So this is 0.02 rated microfarads at 400 volts. This is why, unless I actually start having some problems, I don't really pull a schematic, because once you've worked on 10,000 American radios like I have, then they're very similar. And so I usually pull a schematic if I need it. I'm wondering about the sensitivity of this. Never mind. Actually, this is fascinating. It does have a set of RF transformers. Well, there's an IF and an RF transformer. And these are adjustable via the back. That's nice. It keeps everything nice and clean. So what I'm going to do first is replace these two capacitors, install a power cord, and then bring it up and see if it still works. Alright, so we have the two electrolytic capacitors replaced. I had to run a jumper wire to this one because the radial leads, of course, weren't long enough to stretch from here to there. So I've got it hooked up to my Variac, and with that said, let's flip it over. I bet the pilot light on this thing is burned out too because the way they installed it is stupid. It's permanently soldered in there. Let me scrape some of the dirt off of this so I can see if there's filament. Alright. Bring it up to about 50% initially. Of course, I'm getting no pilot light because the pilot light is boinged out. I'm seeing no filament, which is logical. You don't see any filament at 50%. Bring it up a little bit more. Okay. I am starting to see a little filament. That's a good sign. Let's bring it up the rest of the way. Nothing's smoking. I didn't check the volume to see how loud it is. Boy, is that an unpleasant noise. I don't know what that's all about. We got a loose socket in here. Maybe the antenna's not long enough. Let's try that again. It's an unhappy noise for sure. That is a really not happy noise. Makes me wonder, did I by accident put one of the capacitors in backwards? No, I didn't. That could be a gassy tube. Sure hope not. I don't have any 5Z4 sitting around. So the first thing I'm going to do is check the tubes, see if any of them are shorted or gassy. That will certainly cause that nasty noise. I've gotten through 3 of the tubes so far. 5Z4 is barely there. It measures the bare minimum, so I'll probably replace it, but it's not shorted. But the 6Q7 tube is showing strange intermittent shorts. Now, maybe it's not doing it because it's warmed up. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. You see that? There is probably an internal short. That will certainly cause the radio to be unhappy. The question is, do I have any 6Q7s? Let me go look at my stash. All right, I did have one, and it is not shorting. It's just blipping. When it blips, that's fine. That measures good. Even though this has several sections, so since I already have the tube tester out and the tube in the socket, I'm going to test the other 2 sections, make sure this is a good tube, and then might as well check the rest of the tubes in the set and then power up, see if that shorted 6Q7 was indeed our problem. It sounded like a grounding problem, but it could be that there was an internal short that was causing a ground. I don't know, without taking, without knowing what that section does or where it attaches to. Okay, so the rest of the tubes tested perfectly fine. It was just that one tube that was unhappy. So I'm going to turn it on again and be ready to turn it off if I have to. Okay, that restored the radio working. But that volume control is dirty. It needs to be cleaned. I also need to replace the annoying pilot light. You have to desolder the bottom and then that unscrews. And I don't know if I have any of those screw-in bulbs. Maybe I do. I think I put some in my pocket last time I was over there. Alright. Alright, so we got the volume control cleaned up and a new pilot light installed.
And it's kind of a bummer that we won't get to see him time now.
The fire department was there, everybody was there, and or someone else. He's the kind of player, and there's a
It's interesting.
Wind and 4 computer chambers.
It's a very sensitive little radio, even though I've got just a little stub of an antenna on here. So we're off to a good start. It seems to be working healthily now. And so now comes the time to do the typical boring part of radio restoration, which is replacing all of those capacitors. Okay, so now it's time to do the recap job. And these days what I do is I just get all the caps I need out. And that way I don't have to stand up repeatedly over to get stuff out of my parts bin. Just makes my work a little more efficient. So I'm going to replace like with like. And then we'll give it a test fire after the recap. This is sort of mindless work if you've been doing it for long enough like I have. I can like practically replace these things in my sleep these days. So anyway, see you probably in about another 30 minutes once that's done. Okay, the recapping job is now complete. And before I power it up again, I noticed the speaker has quite a few tears in it. And by playing it more, I risk tearing it more, so I'm going to use an elastic glue to repair it. I use Lexcel. Stuff will stick anything together. Literally, I got parts of my truck held together with it. So I'm going to fill up these cracks with this goo. It needs to stay flexible too. Don't use paper glue because this cone needs to stay flexible. Okay, so we got the speaker repaired, caps replaced. Gonna give it a test fire to make sure it still works, which I hope it does, even though there's many times where I've worked on a radio that I thought was simple and I made a mistake. I will say this, there was actually a loose solder connection in here coming off the transformer. So it's interesting that it actually worked.
Lifted by Saturday. The mayor spoke this week as the capital city remains under a boil water note.
Competir. Todo mundo.
Really good open field tackle by Derek Pitts, the cornerback on that side who transferred first from West Virginia University, then to Mercer. Condemnation.
Communities in need of healing and hope. वे हरकत करते ना.
I was trying to find a music station. God, it's hard to turn off. I need to lubricate that switch or something. But anyway, I was trying to find some music so if I could see if the speaker was rubbing. It doesn't seem like it is. I just find it fascinating that anyone thought it was a great idea to have a speaker core open like that, because that's just asking for trouble. Like microscopic bits of metal and whatnot, debris getting down in there. What I'm going to do now is not necessary, but I do it every time, is I'm going to clean the chassis, get all the dust bunnies out of here, and clean and lubricate the tuning condenser. Clean the tubes. Looks like maybe I could get some glue on the back of that cone too. Anything to help. And then it'll be time to add the audio input feature, which is easy on these guys because it's got a transformer, so it's already electrically isolated. Okay, so now the case is cleaned up. Now it's time to lubricate the bearings on the tuner condenser. There's one in the front and the back. I'm using Zoom Spout Oil, which has a very lovely name. It's just fun to say. Zoom Spout Oil. So anyway, that'll probably start to turn a lot better. Sometimes you have to heat up the bearing surfaces a little bit. And again, you saw I do the volume pot as well. That'll make it turn a lot smoother. Okay, so actually I went ahead and finished up the electrical stuff. I've added a safety fuse between incoming line and the power transformer. That's just a little bit of added assurance, so if anything goes really wrong with that transformer, the fuse will pop first. I'm using a 1.5 amp slow blow. Then the audio is coming through this hole, and I added a rubber grommet so it won't chafe. And then we run our right and left channels through a set of 33 ohm resistors, and those twist together, and that gives you your right and left channels mixed together to make mono. Chassis ground is ground. So what I'm going to do, let's go ahead and fire it up and squeeze my Bluetooth thingy. I'm not sure if I charged it up. Yeah, I did. Okay.
with Chuck's love of coffee. Ain't nothing like
This doesn't seem like it's very loud. Let me make sure I have the volume turned up on the Bluetooth. I have to think about this because that's cranked up all the way. I think I'm going to have to add an audio transformer. Not an audio transformer, isolation transformer to boost my signal a little bit because it's okay. It's just you really can't crank it that much. Ugh. God, why is it so fucking hard to turn off? I guess it's because I don't have the knob on there. So, change of plans. All right, so we have this transformer installed. This is a 110 to 6 volt ratio, if that gives you any idea. We're going to run that through the volume pot. That's going to increase our signal so that it won't be so quiet. At least that's the idea. So let's go ahead. It's already on. Let's plug it in. See if we have any improvement with volume. And it should still be playing because I didn't stop the music. Now, of course, it sounds distorted because the volume on my device is so high. Let me turn the volume down. All right, now I have more volume ability, and that's good. So if electrically, the set is done. So now it's time to work on the dirty case, which is, I believe, it's Plascoon. I think the volume control is still funny. It's like it's resonating. That 6K6 is acting microphonic. Might need to replace that guy. Yeah, okay, that 6K6 is no bueno. Okay, the next step is I'm going to take this whole thing over to the sink and clean it. I use a gentle product called Simple Green. Zero cracks, which is good. This stuff is, some of the earlier plastics are a little brittle, so it's not difficult to imagine someone dropping something or putting it down hard and cracking it, but this is all there. All right, so it cleaned up pretty well. I did, however, notice, unfortunately, there is a crack in it. It's not in a super noticeable area. It's in this back corner here. And so what I did is I cleaned it out really well. It's a clean crack, and I used super glue to fix it. And so now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take an orbital buffer and use a product that I've been using for years and years. You see, I dropped stuff out of the cabinet. Is Novus number 2 plastic polish. And just literally in the last month I discovered this attachment for my drill. Sure makes my life a lot easier. I used to do this by hand, and I was actually starting to have issues where my hands were actually cramping up from doing so much polishing work. And this just makes my life a lot easier. It does it quicker, does a better job. As you can see, it's a little dull. It should be a more shiny than that versus this kind of dull whatever. So I'm going to get out my power cordless drill and have at this surface for a while. Alright, so that polisher worked great. I was even able to obscure most of the crack. Like here it is down here. You just, if it's in the right light, if it's in the light right, you'll see it. I also glued the little plastic window back down, and I decided the old grill cloth was just completely ratted out. I'm going to put this new grill cloth in. And what I'm doing is I'm warming up my iron. And then all you do is get a little steam and don't steam over the cord like I just almost did. Yeah, it's a pretty small piece, so probably no one's going to notice the wrinkle, but I will. All right. actually looking pretty good, so I'll glue that in. Then we'll put the radio in and clean the knobs, and it'll be done. Turn off. Jesus, come on, phone. Alright, she sounds pretty good, and I think this Glurl cloth looks a lot better than the original, which was worn out. My wife agrees that it looks better, and so there you have it. I also polished the knobs and polished the brass here. You know, usually cream colored radios to me are super boring, but I think this combination with the knobs, the grill cloth, that kind of amber colored light back here, that all really comes together and makes a really nice looking piece. So it's a good example from the era. It's a good example of a Packard bell from this era. Anyway, that concludes this episode. If you have any questions or comments, I'll try to get them to them down in the comments section. And until the next time a radio comes across my workbench, I'll see you guys next time. Adios.